This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
We welcome in Brad Crawford again on the McClarty Daniel Hotline, 247 Sports. Brad, can't wait to see you in person next week, man. I know that you're going to get a chance to talk with each of these guys that Arkansas is bringing, KJ, Rock, and Landon. What are you excited to learn about them this next week?
Yeah, Ty, good to hear from you, man. Yeah, I'm excited to see what KJ has to say about Dan Enos and just how the transition to this new offense in Fayetteville has gone throughout the offseason. We heard him talk a little bit during the spring. Didn't hear a ton from Rocket Sanders, but, man, I think these guys are the most productive returning 1-2 punch at the quarterback and running back position, and that's why if I'm a Hogs fan, I'm not too worried about this offensive transition. And looking at the schedule, Ty, I think that there's a path for maybe 9 wins for the Hogs this fall.
Wow, that would be something if they ended up doing that. Now, on both those guys, Rocket Sanders is going to be an all-SEC, their first or second team, depending on Quinshon Judkins. He's also going to be in the Doak Walker conversation. KJ is going to be in that kind of dark horse Heisman as he was last year. Didn't have that last year because of injury. What do you think is more likely to happen, Brad, that we, at the end of the season, are celebrating a Rocket Sanders, Doak Walker award, or that KJ is a legitimate Heisman contender come November?
Yeah, I'm not sure that KJ's team is going to have, the 10-2, 11-1 type finish necessary, in my opinion, to be a Heisman finalist. Now, I will say if Rocket Sanders has a 1,700-yard, 20-touchdown season, he might have a better shot at making it to New York than KJ. But I just think right now Arkansas certainly has some questions at wideout. Bunch of leading receivers last season who were there, no longer there. I think that the strength of this team might even be on the other side of the ball with all the transfer additions. Sam Pittman has really hit that portal hard. But I just think, getting back to your original question, I think Rocket Sanders may outperform KJ, at least from a stat perspective this season, just because I expect the Arkansas offensive line to, still be a nose to the grindstone type position group, and Rocket, as long as he can stay healthy, he's going to get another 1,400 to 1,500 yards on the ground.
So, Brad, let's talk about those wide receivers. You mentioned ones that have transferred out, and I would think in a lot of people's opinion, and at least in mine, that the ones you got in weren't exactly the top shelf available wide receivers available in the portal, and Arkansas didn't seem to be a place that the best wide receivers that put themselves out there targeted. Well, why do you think that is?
That's a real big question. Dan Enos' scheme is pro style, sort of methodical, not necessarily a high tempo, fast paced. I don't think it's necessarily an offense that attracts a ton of eyes in terms of its sexiness, but I do think it fits Arkansas. This is what Sam Pittman wants to do. He made that hire quickly after Kendall Briles left, and that was really a fast and tidy decision from him, and he still feels pretty good about it. Well, I mean, when you have two upperclassmen like KJ Jefferson and Raheim Sanders back, it certainly helps. But I do think some of the guys they got in the portal can be productive. I like Arkansas a lot at the tight end position. I think Arkansas will probably have the most productive tight end group in the conference outside of Georgia. Obviously, no one's going to match the kind of numbers Brock Bowers and some of them guys are going to put up at the tight end spot in Athens. But, true freshman Luke Haas is a really good athlete, and he's going to play a lot of snaps, and he's a guy that I think in the red zone can be super productive in this Dan Enos scheme.
You mentioned tempo there a moment ago, and a more methodical approach with Dan Enos versus Kendall Briles, who did like to ramp up the tempo. Considering the rule changes, considering Enos' philosophy, what will be the difference or the net result for this offense? I just think in the terms of, Brad, of number of plays, you may see an Arkansas offense that has 8, 10, 12 less plays in a ball game. That's nearly a full possession.
Yeah, as long as this offensive line can keep KJ upright and not ask him to, have 160 to 180 carries type, halving the workload with Raheim Sanders. There's guys behind Rocket that can also carry the football, and I don't think you're going to see Dan Enos ask KJ to carry it, 15 to 18 times a game like he at times had to do under Kendall Briles. I think KJ is going to have a season where, he wants to stay in the pocket as much as he can because he's trying to make the NFL too. And as a redshirt senior, this might be his best season as far as a passer. Each of the last 2 seasons, guys, he has improved from a developmental aspect as a throw first, run second quarterback. We all know that he's very productive on the ground. He's strong, 255 pounds or so. We know he's good there. But if this Arkansas offense is difference making, I think the bread and butter is you get things started with the ground game, and then you let KJ showcase his accuracy with play action.
All guests join us on the McClarty Daniel Hotline. That's where Brad Crawford of 247 Sports is right now. Brad, you're talking about KJ. We had Phil Still on yesterday. He has him as the second best quarterback in this league. I know KJ improved mightily on your list. Where do you have him not only in this conference, but across college football amongst quarterbacks?
Yeah, I've got KJ as number 9 overall in my top 25 as far as, from a Power 5 quarterback perspective. He's an elite quarterback. I have him number 1 in the SEC. I came out with those pre-media days rankings yesterday. I just think right now at the quarterback position, he doesn't have any question marks. I think him and Jaden Daniels are superior to the other 12 guys who are projected to start in this league. I think quarterback outside of Arkansas and LSU is a major question for a lot of these programs, and including Georgia. Back-to-back national titles, still hasn't decided on their guy yet. You look at a guy like Spencer Rattler at South Carolina, didn't perform the way a lot of us media types thought he would until late November last year. So KJ is the most consistent passer in the SEC. I think he's going to show it once again. And one thing about KJ is he doesn't get you in bad plays. He doesn't turn it over. And when you ask him to make the good play, he sometimes makes a great play. So he's one of the most accurate quarterbacks downfield as well, which I think if these new collection of Arkansas wideouts can get open and there's big play potential, KJ's a guy who can get you to football.
Brad, that LSU-Arkansas matchup this year is really intriguing. 2 years ago, Arkansas won on a game-winning field goal. Last year, no KJ Jefferson. Maybe the best 2 quarterbacks meeting up in the SEC. I think it's the most intriguing game on Arkansas' schedule. For your money, what's the most intriguing game on the SEC slate that you have to see this fall?
Oh, man. And in terms of the entire SEC, I'll give you one non-conference game and one conference game. Texas at Alabama in week 2 is going to show college football that Texas is finally an elite program under Steve Sarkisian. I've got Texas winning that game in Tuscaloosa. I don't think it's a changing of the guard, so to speak, but Alabama's quarterback issues are far greater than what Nick Saban's leading on. I don't think they got Tyler Buckner out of the portal to start immediately. They still like Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson, but he's more of a security blanket type option in case one of those 2 guys go. So Bama's a team that I think could lose 3 games this season. And then as far as the most important SEC game, I think Georgia-Tennessee in November is going to decide the East, depending on how Tennessee does the first 8 to 9 weeks of the season. It's the only game against a ranked opponent Kirby Smart has to play before Atlanta in December, which is just crazy. I mean, he's going to be a 14, two touchdown favorite in just about every game this season except that trip to Knoxville. So that's a huge game. But getting back to Arkansas, man, their 2 most important games both come in September, in my opinion. It's that SEC opener in Baton Rouge, and then it's Texas A&M the week after that.
Yeah, that's an early and unusual spot for Arkansas and LSU in September. Brad Crawford, 247 Sports, with us on the McClarty Daniel Hotline. One of the things that will lead SEC Media Days is Greg Sankey's address. It's like a State of the Union. Pending conference expansion, the dissolution of divisions in football, new scheduling models have all been the top of the conversation. Brad, this is almost like what sets the tone for the rest of college sports, what the commissioner of the SEC says in this address. What do you think are some of the important notes that he will be sharing and his thoughts in Nashville next week?
Oh, certainly. I'm sure Greg and his team in Birmingham has been rehearsing this for months. Sort of like Nick Saban. You can ask Nick Saban a question, but whatever he has in his mind that he's going to answer with, he's going to spit it out to you. And that's the same way Greg Sankey is, the czar of sorts of college football. And like you said, man, the Big Ten is going to follow his lead. What's said next week in Nashville is probably going to be said in Charlotte at ACC Media Days. So I think it'll be interesting to see what kind of questions are asked about, SEC further expansion, Greg, he hasn't been mum on that. He said that we're going to, people are going to follow our lead, basically. And I do think the SEC eventually gets to 20 teams. We'll see the SEC expand to 16 next year with no divisions, with the inclusion of the Longhorns and Sooners. And then I think within the next 5 years, you're going to see a 20-team super conference where it's going to be the SEC versus the Big Ten pretty much battling for, 8 of the 12, expanded playoff spots every year. So I think the SEC is in very good hands right now with Greg Sankey, unless he leaves the league here soon and becomes college football's new commissioner.
Now, you talk about expansion and going to 20 teams. Who would be the 4 teams that you would target for an expanded SEC that hadn't expanded yet to 16 teams officially?
Yeah, I would try to get 2 from the Pac-12, probably maybe Oregon and Washington, and then I would get the 2 big ones from the ACC, and that's Florida State and Clemson. I don't know what Clemson offers a whole lot outside of football, but we're talking about a top 10 program every year, elite-wise, on the gridiron. And we know Florida State was sort of the cheerleading leader for this revenue distribution that they want to try to start in the ACC, which, by the way, it wouldn't work. Unequal revenue distribution is not going to work in any conference. It might work for 2 or 3 years before the rest of the league, says, look, we want our fair share of the pie or we're going to be out. So I think the Pac-12 or the ACC, in my opinion, will be the next Power 5 league that sort of dissolves from its members leaving. And, I think Florida State, Clemson, Miami, and UNC are the 4 big ones from the ACC that will be split between the SEC and the Big Ten.
Talking college football with Brad Crawford on the McLarty Daniel Hotline. Brad, I want to stay down in kind of that neck of the woods with the team you just referenced, and that was the Georgia Bulldogs. Kirby Smart's had to deal with a few off-the-field issues as of late, and I would guess that's something that Greg Sankey will also address this next week. Is this becoming an Urban Meyer Florida situation in Athens, Georgia right now?
That's a good question, Ty. We have to stop giving these players Dodge Hellcats, that's for sure. These cars are not meant for 18 and 19-year-old kids who have been driving for a year. They go 0 to 80 in 3 seconds, and a lot of these guys can't drive them. And unfortunately, back in January, it led to a death of a staffer and a former player. So it's an unfortunate situation right now at Georgia. Without speculating, I think that this happens a lot at elite programs, but for whatever reason, it's starting to come out more in Athens than it is, at 5 to 7 other programs that also deal with these same issues. I don't think it's necessarily a witch hunt of sorts, like some of the media is saying as well. I mean, these guys are, getting cited for speeding or drinking or other issues, but I don't think it's quite as bad as losing control of the program the way Urban Meyer did with some major illegal activity. But obviously Kirby Smart has to fix this situation, or you can continue to win national titles, but it's kind of hard to hide and cover up some of these issues that he's having to deal with right now between the hedges. That's
one of the big coaching questions I think people have in this neck of the woods. If you go up north, it's what's happening with Pat Fitzgerald, who, according to just been let go. What I know that, again, you more cover the SEC, but it's a huge college football story for an alumnus of Northwestern. What did you think about the reports and everything that came out on Pat Fitzgerald?
I was pretty surprised, man, because based on everybody I've talked to through the years of doing this, I've been a national reporter now for about 11 years. And, I mean, Pat Fitzgerald is one of the squeaky clean, traditional head coaches who, his teams play hard. He does more with less, like a lot of guys in the Power 5. And every now and then he gets to the Big Ten championship game. And to know that now some of this alleged stuff, has happened under his watch, I think it's unfortunate. And I think it's a bad look for Northwestern's decision makers as well, because to give a guy a 2-week suspension, knowing some of this stuff went down, is kind of a bad look there. I don't know if Northwestern thought they could sweep it under the rug, but it's a win for journalism. By the way, the student newspaper, award-winning paper at Northwestern, has done a fantastic job covering this story from all angles, getting sources on the record. They've done a great job there, but I I think some of the early candidates, besides hiring from within, I don't think that'll happen necessarily. But you're going to see guys like Ohio State OC Brian Hartline probably get a call, and Michigan OC Sharon Moore. Some of those big time Power 5 Broyles Award candidate type guys, I think, are going to be interested in this job because it's a hard job to win at. But look, it's one of the now 16 jobs in the Big Ten. We know the Big Ten is the industry leader in revenue, so it's a big time job.
It's amongst the 30 best jobs in college sports, probably.
Right. Yep.
And I think what's interesting in this story, and probably will come up in the questioning in Nashville next week, is Pat Fitzgerald wasn't in this report, and the way the school's laying it out, he didn't necessarily know, but as it was stated several times in the report, he had the opportunity to know. So he was fired for not knowing what he should have been aware of, which, hey, you're in charge. You're the leader of your program. You're the department head, if you will. It's your job to know what's going on, even though you may not have direct knowledge. I think that's an interesting thing that other coaches around the sport should at least certainly take note of.
That's exactly right. I wouldn't say that he may have knowingly allowed this to go on, but look, if something happens within your football program, you're the guy getting paid the big bucks at essentially a private school. So, the buck stops with you. You have to answer to all the issues. When a player gets arrested, you give the quotes. When you have to fire an assistant, it's at your table. You make the decision. So when something awry goes on inside your program, you have to answer the tough question. And whether he knew about this or not, I think is sort of beyond the point. It's the fact that, it happened several times allegedly. You have now a dozen players who have come out and corroborated some of those original stories. So it's a bad look for the university. It's unfortunate for Pat Fitzgerald, but I do think Northwestern can come out on top on this if they're able to make a good football hire.
Brad Crawford, 247 Sports, always kind enough to join us again on the McCarty Daniel Hotline. Brad, we appreciate your time this morning. We'll see you next week in Nashville at SEC Media Days.
See you guys then.
BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.